In this presentation, Prorating Costs, what you need to know, you will learn how to prorate your business costs when your childcare business is part of a larger enterprise. The information contained here has been prepared by Civitas Strategies and is not intended to constitute legal, tax, or financial advice. The Civitas Strategies team has used reasonable efforts in collecting, preparing, and providing this information, but does not guarantee its accuracy, completeness, adequacy, or currency. The publication and distribution of this information are not intended to create, and receipt does not constitute, an attorney-client, or any other advisory relationship. Reproduction of this information is expressly prohibited. Only non-commercial uses of this work are permitted. In this video, we will discuss different childcare locations and setups, shared costs versus actual costs, different methods of proration, and how to prorate your expenses. Childcare centers have a lot in common, no matter where they're located. Whether you're providing care from your home, a dedicated center, or a church basement, your goal is to offer a safe and nurturing environment, and you will incur business costs in doing so. While these costs may be similar from one organization to the next, there are some notable differences between these three location types, especially when it comes to determining what percentage of your expenses can be allocated to your childcare business. In this video, we will focus on calculating business costs when your childcare business is part of a larger organization. Whether you are calculating your cash flow forecast, tabulating purchases made with your childcare counts payments, or tax deductions, it is a good idea to understand the key differences in calculating expenses for different types of businesses. If you operate your family childcare program out of your home, it's likely that many of your expenses are shared between your business and your personal home life. Figuring out which expenses can be deducted from your taxes or are eligible expenses that can be paid for with childcare counts funding can seem complicated, but, luckily, it's much simpler than you might think. Home-based family childcare providers can use what's called the time-space calculation to figure out what percentage of their expenses can be attributed to their childcare business and therefore are eligible for tax deductions or money received from childcare counts payments. The time-space calculation considers the percentage of space in your home that is used for business, as well as the amount of time your home is used for business. To learn more about the time-space calculation and how to use it to calculate the allowable expenses for your home-based family childcare program, reference our time-space calculation resources. If your organization is a childcare center that is not housed within a larger business or organization, determining how much of your expenses are allocated to your childcare business is likely a lot simpler. That's because the answer is generally 100% of them. If your facility is a childcare center and nothing but a childcare center, and you are not operating as a part of a larger organization or location, then all of your expenses for that location should be related to the operation of your business. If your childcare operation is a part of a larger enterprise, then only a portion of expenses may be allocated specifically to your childcare business. This would be the case if, for example, your childcare center is part of a YMCA or a local church. To figure out what percentage of expenses are specifically associated with your childcare business operations, you will need to prorate your business costs. Prorated costs are those that are divided proportionally based on a unit of time, location, or another factor relevant to the business. For example, if your childcare business is located in the basement of a local church, the utility costs would be shared between the childcare business and the rest of the church. Because only a portion of the building is used for your childcare business, only a portion of the utility bills would be considered childcare business expenses. To determine how much would be allotted to your childcare business, you will need to go through the following 4 steps. Step 1 is to document actual costs that impacted your childcare business and only your childcare business. Expenses that can be allocated specifically to your childcare business include any supplies purchased only for the program, payroll and personnel costs for childcare employees, personal protective equipment and cleaning supplies for the childcare center, and any goods or services that are essential to running the childcare program. Maintenance and repair expenses for areas of your facility that are used solely by your childcare program would be included here too. We highly recommend that you maintain accurate business records to document all of these costs. Reference our record-keeping resources to learn more about what documentation you should be saving and for how long, and record your expenses. If it is not a shared expense, you account 100% of the cost as a business expense. Step 2. Document costs that are shared between your childcare center and the rest of your facility. Calculating shared expenses can get a bit trickier, but doing so is worthwhile to your bottom line. To be allocated to your childcare business, the expense must have impacted your childcare program in some way. The cost also must be considered reasonable and necessary to operate the childcare business. Take, for example, electricity. It's obviously needed to run the business and, as such, is considered an allocable expense, but because it's used by the entire facility, it's a shared expense. Other shared expenses could include things like repairs to a shared church parking lot, as it's needed by both parents and church members for parking. But a renovation of the church's tabernacle would not be considered eligible for reimbursement, as it's not necessary for the operation of the childcare business. Similarly, maintenance to areas of your facility that are shared between your childcare program and other operations would be eligible, but maintenance made to an area that is not used at all by the program would not be an allocable expense. Say you are part of a YMCA that has 3 campuses, but only one of those campuses houses the childcare facility. Only the costs incurred at the location with the childcare center are eligible. If the costs apply to the entire facility, not just the childcare location, the percentage of eligible costs must be calculated using one of the methods explained in the next section. Next, choose a method of proration. Figuring out exactly which expenses are eligible business expenses requires choosing a method of proration. And you should stick with whichever method you choose in order to keep things consistent. 3 methods of proration that you could use are percentage of the total square footage of facilities, percentage of total revenue, and percentage of total costs. The first method of proration we will discuss is percentage of total square footage of facilities. Take the number of square feet of the space used for your childcare program and divide it by the total square footage of your entire facility. To calculate square footage, you will need to measure the length and width of your space. Fix a tape measure to one end of the longest wall in your space and extend it to the other end. Record this measurement in feet, not inches. Next, fix a tape measure to one end of the shortest wall in your space and extend it to the other end. Record this measurement in feet, not inches. Next, multiply the length measurement by the width measurement to find your square footage. Length times width equals square footage. For example, if your space is 12 feet long and 10 feet wide, your square footage would be 120 square feet. 12 feet times 10 feet equals 120 square feet. For oddly shaped spaces, such as rooms with an extra nook or closet, break your room into smaller rectangular blocks, use the square footage calculation for each block, and add the totals together. Once you have your totals, you divide the square footage of your childcare space by the square footage of your entire facility to find a percentage. For example, if you use 1,000 square feet of your facility for childcare space, and the entire facility is 5,500 square feet, then you divide 1,000 by 5,500 to get 0.181. Multiply that number by 100 to get the percentage of 18.1%. This means that 18.1% of your overall expenses, such as utilities and maintenance, or the parking lot example from earlier, would be eligible. When you prorate something, you are calculating or assigning an amount as a share of a whole. Another common method of proration is to calculate what percentage of your total revenue is made up by the revenue of your childcare program. Yes, that means doing more math. First, you need to calculate the total revenue for your entire facility. If, for example, you are a fitness center that includes a childcare program, you need to calculate your total revenue from all of your programs, including your childcare program. Next, calculate the revenue from your childcare program only. Make sure you are using the same time period, typically your fiscal year, for both of these calculations. Then, divide the revenue from your childcare program by the total revenue for your entire facility. Once you have that figure, it will be a decimal. Multiply it by 100 to get a percentage. For example, if your childcare program revenue is $25,000 and your total revenue is $200,000, divide $25,000 by $200,000. The result is 0.125. Multiply that number by 100 to get the percentage 12.5%. This means that 12.5% of your overall expenses would be eligible. You also can calculate your allocable expenses by figuring out what percentage of your total costs are spent on your childcare program. This is similar to calculating the percentage of total revenue, except that instead of calculating money in, you are calculating the amount of money out. The first step is to figure out the costs for your entire operation. Include the costs attributed to your childcare program in this figure. Next, figure out the total cost for your childcare program. This should include the dedicated costs for the program, think supplies, salaries, etc., but not costs that are shared between the childcare program and the entire operation. Think back to that parking lot example. The money spent on that should be included in the costs for the entire operation only, as you can double count costs. This can get confusing, so if you have a lot of shared costs, choosing another method of proration may be a better option. Once you have both figures ready, you divide the total costs of your child care program by the total costs of your overall organization. Once you have that figure, which will be a decimal, multiply it by 100 to get a percentage. Say you spend $15,000 on your child care program and $95,000 overall. You divide $15,000 by $95,000. Your result is 0.157. Multiply that number by 100 to get the percentage, 15.7%. That means that 15.7% of your overall expenses would be eligible. Step 4. Apply your proration percentage to your expenses. Now that you've chosen a method of proration, let's apply your result to your costs to figure out your total allowable business expenses. For this example, we'll use the figure we calculated in the previous section, 15.7%. Enter your shared expense into the worksheet. Once your expenses are entered in your worksheet, you'll need to enter the percentage incurred by your child care business. If it is not a shared expense, the percentage is 100%. If it is a shared expense, take the percentage that you calculated using your method of proration and enter it here. In this example, we are using 15.7%. Next, divide the percentage by 100 to turn it into a decimal, and then multiply that decimal by the shared expense amount. 15.7 divided by 100 equals 0.157. $2,000 multiplied by 0.157 equals $314. So in this case, the allowable business expense of the $2,000 utility bill is $314. You can continue to take the same approach to your business costs, whether they are shared or not, and add them together to get your total business expenses. In this example, we use the percent of total costs. However, it can be worth the time to try out the other methods, percent of the total square footage of facilities, or percentage of total revenue, to see which is better for your business. For more information, visit the Child Care Collaborative of Iowa website or email fmc@midsioux.org.